Chapter 41. 1 month later. Aarti put up the last frame of Aryan and her in her new drawing room and took a few steps back. Aryan stood by her side, with his fingers folded on his chin, looking at the frames his mother had put up on the wall. It was a collage of photos from his birth to the present, with the important members of his family. A wall that would remind Aryan that this was his new home, with the love from everyone who didn't stay there. "Does it work there?" Aarti asked. "Yup," Aryan said happily, without giving it any more thought, as he went to take out more toys from his box and unpack them in his cupboard. "But tell me again, why you are staying here while Papa is moving in with Dadu and Dadi?" Aarti went inside her new bedroom and opened Aryan's cupboard to check if there was some space there. "Well, mister, since your toys have just increased over time, we needed more space to keep them in a new place." Aryan made a face at her as she continued speaking a little more gently to help him understand. "And Papa needs to stay with his parents. They're getting old, and he needs to look after them now." "But why can't you stay with them too?" Aryan asked logically, handing some books he had packed for himself. Aarti and Amitabh had decided that Aryan would stay with her and visit her in-laws and Amitabh on a daily basis. Whenever she travelled, he would sleep at Amitabh's house, and Aarti had promised to keep her travelling to a minimum. Aryan had been upset in the beginning, but when Aarti included him in the house hunting and packing, he was most excited to have his own space and make a new home for himself. "Well, Mama needs some space too, baby, and sometimes Mamas and Papas don't stay together. But that doesn't mean they don't love you and want the best for their little brats," Aarti said, hoping Aryan would understand for now. "I'm not a brat," Aryan replied with a smile, and Aarti started chasing him around the house, as Amitabh used to when he was young. Aarti would explain to him about the separation and hope that he understood in time, but for now she needed to give him assurance that he was safe and loved by everyone. The maid rang the doorbell, and Aarti told her to get some vegetables. She told Aryan to go downstairs with her, buy vegetables, and go to the lawns to play. The nanny would supervise his playing before Aarti reached downstairs for her kickboxing class. Just as they left and Aarti went about unpacking, the doorbell rang. "Oh, Aryan, I'm sure you've left your ball," she said loudly as she picked it up from his toy drawer and opened the door. She threw it just as Dhruv caught the ball and said, "Are we playing catch?" "Dhruv?" Aarti was shocked. He smiled as he leaned against the door. Aarti felt confused and pleased at the same time. "How did you find me?" "Can I come in and explain?" he asked as he ran his fingers through his hair, looking deliciously appealing. She opened the door wider. He walked in. "By the way, I just met Aryan. He reminds me of someone." She walked to the sofa and sat down. "Come, sit. We need to talk." Sarita and Jay packed their bags, preparing to leave for America that night, as Rahul bounced around the house singing a love song from an old Shah Rukh Khan movie. He hugged his mother as he crooned. Sarita giggled, happy to see him in such a jovial mood. Riya sat sulking in a corner, watching TV. Rahul was already fully packed for a week. He had never been so excited in his life. "Riya," Sarita called out, "don't forget to give Dadi her medicines every morning. You're in charge of your grandparents. Remember." Rahul sang as he twirled his morose sister around. "Tu हाँ कर या ना कर, तू है मेरी Riya." Riya pushed him aside. She didn't think it was fair that she was being punished for her deeds. She had thought her parents had forgiven her, but clearly they hadn't. A part of her was happy that she would have the room all to herself since Rahul wouldn't be coming back from the States. He was enrolling in the arts program at Tisch School in New York. But she was also sad that she wouldn't have her big brother around. Jay packed his underwear. Sarita took out the harness from under the bed. He looked at her slyly. "Do you want to do that again?" Sarita nodded with glee. "Of course. We need to pack this. I'm guessing they have stronger hooks in America." Jay smiled as Sarita came to him, put her arms around his head, and kissed him passionately. And I'm sure we can buy a few more toys while we're there. That's why I've left room in my suitcase. Jay kissed her back with equal ardor and unpacked his underwear before saying, I'll leave some room too. Sarita looked at him with a twinkle in her eyes, and they both glanced towards the open door. Both her children were staring at her with widened eyes and a disgusted look. Sarita remarked, You have a problem? Go get your own house. And as she threw her head back and laughed, a wave of joy and peace washed over her. Rahul had recovered well and realized that he didn't need Natasha in his life. Sarita, Jay and Rahul had a serious conversation about his needs and where he saw his future. Jay and Sarita decided that there was no point in saving so much if they couldn't spend it on making their children's dreams come true. Sarita's in-laws had protested at first, but Jay had stood up for Sarita and Rahul, remarking then that maybe they need to move to their own house when they return from the US. In the meantime, they would stay in the current apartment with Ria, who was being punished for sending their nasty email and wouldn't accompany them. They were going to be in New York for 3 weeks. Sarita knew that when she returned, she would spend more time with Ria and try to get to know her better as well. She didn't want a repeat episode of the hospital scene in her life. It was going to be the first trip she took abroad, and she couldn't wait to sit in first class. She wanted to show Jay what she had learned about the Mile High Club. She wore her black lace bra just for the journey. It was going to be a ride they would never forget. Oh my God, Mom! Can't believe he said that to you. We'll totally discuss this with you when I'm there this weekend. P.S. I don't need an iPad. I have a phone that is very cool. Thanks for offering to buy me one. I love you. Natasha read the message from Dia and felt a lightness in her heart that had not been there for a long time. Boarding had worked wonders for the relationship. Dia had cried when Natasha had driven her to Panchgani. Natasha was thankful that before that, they had spent many days talking to each other about their feelings, what had brought on Dia's resentment of her mother, and how Natasha had tried but failed to understand her daughter. They bonded, and by the time Dia was to leave for boarding school, the bitterness that surrounded their relationship had gone away. It was in one of those conversations that Natasha told Dia that it was Ria who had sent the gossip email. Dia was furious. Natasha told her the truth, not hiding her reasons for doing what she did. Dia appreciated her honesty and realized that it was probably because of her that Ria had acted that way. She learned the folly of her ways. Natasha and Dia were facing a new beginning. When she had gone to meet her the previous weekend, she took a promise from Dia that she would call Vikram every day to talk to him. Dia had promised. Natasha didn't want her only child to break away from her father, and Dia needed to help Vikram as well. By giving answers to his only child, she hoped that Vikram would learn to start respecting women again, and, in the process, understand himself better as well. Vikram had started his anger management therapy and moved back into the house. Natasha had moved to another building in the meantime. She had enough from the alimony, but she was still searching for what she should do with her life. She discussed her plans with Dia on a regular basis, and her daughter helped her think her ideas through. She'd been thinking of becoming a counselor for adolescents and their parents, teenagers who needed guidance, and parents who didn't understand them. She knew she could do counseling from home, as she had enough space in a roomy 2-bedroom apartment in Malad. It was walking distance from the malls and close enough to visit her friends in Sapphire Towers. She grabbed her purse to head out of the house for an evening walk by herself. Even though she had friends who cared for her, Natasha finally felt alive because she was alone. She wasn't ever meant to be a housewife. She knew that now. She had fallen into it accidentally. She was happy to be single and a mother. Being alone completed her more than being with someone. She entered the lift and pressed G. Just as the doors were closing, a young man stopped it and entered. His shoulders, a yard wide, were molded in warm, golden bronze. His dark eyes framed a handsomely square face, while his light hair was a sharp contrast to his deep tan. He turned and looked at her as a smile turned the corners of his mouth. His attire was simple but sophisticated, and Natasha immediately grasped that only a man who was working could afford such an expensive outfit. "Hello, Auntie." The warmth of his smile echoed in his voice. Her tone was as smooth as single malt. "Call me Natasha." Geeta and Sahil moved out of the building into another colony. Her in-laws had disowned both of them, and Shailesh had agreed to give her a divorce immediately. Geeta had promised Shailesh that he would have access to his children, but they seemed to be quite happy with their new surroundings and with their Sahil Chacha. They travelled by bus to their school, while Geeta continued her catering business. Sahil rented a large flat with a massive kitchen for Geeta to employ 3 servants and a nanny to manage her business and their children. With his support, her business grew, and word of mouth made Geeta's kitchen the best catering service in the area. She started 2 new bank accounts in her children's names and deposited money into them every month. She finally had a purpose that was more than being a wife. She loved her career as much as she loved looking after her family. And she had never felt as much bliss in her life as she did when she was wrapped in Sahil's arms every night as he whispered in her ear before he slept, "I love you." "Sangeeta?" Geeta called out to the house help as she wiped her hands on a kitchen towel. "Will you go pick up the girls from downstairs? They've gone for tennis." Geeta was delighted with the ample space of a new complex. There were 5 towers of apartments, 2 pools that were uncovered because no one cared if the women were in their bathing suits, a billiards room, a large dance hall, and 2 tennis courts. "I have to go for my Zumba class. I'm running late. Give them milk and let them start their homework. Sahil should come any minute." The maid said yes to her mistress's instructions. She left the house as Geeta peeped into the kitchen on her way out, fully dressed in track pants and a bright green Nike shirt that she had bought with her own money. Oh, how that made her feel good! She had asked Sahil if she could join the Zumba class, and he had looked at her confused. "Why are you asking me for permission, darling? If you have the time, go right ahead." He had taken his wallet out immediately and said, "How much do you need for the class? Will you dance around in your kurtas or shall I give you some money for sports clothes?" Geeta had looked at him and wondered how she had got so lucky. Maybe God had heard her prayers after all. Or maybe she had finally got the courage to listen to her own prayers and do something about them. She held his hand and said, "I think I can afford it myself." Financial independence liberated her. She knew she could always count on Sahil, but knowing that she could support herself gave her immense self-respect. Her children saw that she was earning and spending her own money, and involuntarily, she was instilling in them the power of choosing to do anything they wanted in their own lives. She knew at heart she was still a housewife, but she understood how powerful that was as well. A woman who chose to sacrifice her life for the sake of her family was the greatest woman on earth. A housewife is the backbone of any society. It is because of her that men can go out to have a career, and children grow up to be good human beings. Without her support, there would be complete chaos in the house. But a housewife needs to be nurtured and appreciated. Only then can she give from her endless reservoir the love and encouragement to make this society healthy. Geeta was extremely proud to be a housewife.